There's always been something about Jimin from BTS that people can't quite put into words. It's not just the visuals, though those speak for themselves. And it's not just the dancing, even though that alone is enough to make your jaw drop. There's something happening inside his voice that's almost impossible to explain using ordinary language. And now, with the release of Arirang in March 2026, that conversation is louder than ever. Musicians, music critics, and people who aren't even ARMY are all asking the same thing. What exactly makes Jimin's voice different from every other pop singer out there? Because here's the thing. If you listen to a Jimin song and then immediately jump to literally any other pop artist, Korean, American, British, doesn't matter, something feels different. Not that the others are bad, but there's a specific quality in Jimin's voice that you just can't find anywhere else. And it's not about hitting high notes. It's not about technical perfection or award counts. It's about something much deeper than that. And that's exactly what we're going to break down today. Let's start with the basics. When people talk about vocal spectrum, they're not just talking about how high or low someone can sing. They're talking about the full range of a singer's vocal capabilities, tone color, technique, the ability to move between registers seamlessly, and how they express emotion through sound alone. Most pop singers have a comfort zone. Some are incredible at falsetto but thin in chest voice. Some are powerhouse belters but stiff when a song needs delicacy. Some have a wide range, but every note sounds almost the same. And that's fine. That's not a failure. That's a vocal identity. But Jimin plays by a completely different set of rules. And that's exactly what makes him one of the most endlessly discussed vocal talents in the music industry today. Let's trace the journey from the beginning. Jimin was born in Busan, South Korea on October 13, 1995. He didn't enter big hit entertainment because of his voice. He got in because of his dancing. At an arts high school in Busan, he trained in contemporary dance, not classical vocal performance. That means when he started performing with BTS, he wasn't the product of years of intense formal vocal training the way some artists are. His voice grew and developed in the middle of brutal rehearsal schedules, relentless performances, and enormous pressure. And it was precisely in that environment that something truly unique emerged. A Japanese opera singer known online as Rosenduff3 conducted a deep analysis of Jimin's vocals after watching his MTV Unplugged performance. What she found left even a classical music professional genuinely amazed. She noted how Jimin is able to gradually reduce his volume while still maintaining tonal quality as he moves toward higher notes, a skill she described as extremely rare and technically very difficult. She compared it to climbing stairs while making yourself a smaller target. It requires far more strength and precision than simply singing without managing volume at all. And Jimin does it smoothly, without ever sounding forced. Something else she highlighted was the consistency of his tone color. This matters enormously. A lot of singers, even very experienced ones, have what's called a register break, a noticeable shift in color when they move from chest voice to head voice or falsetto. The sound gets thinner, or more nasal, or you can clearly hear that it's a different mechanism at work. But what she specifically noted about Jimin is that his tone color doesn't change between registers. That's not a small thing. That is a rare vocal achievement, even among formally trained singers. Lim Hyung-ju, a Korean opera tenor and Grammy voting member, has also offered specific praise for Jimin, highlighting his ability to reach high notes in falsetto, his clarity of diction, and his power to draw listeners in through sheer technique. This is an industry small talk. Lim Hyung-ju is someone whose life is spent studying and critiquing voices from the highest technical level. When someone like that speaks up about Jimin, it's worth paying attention. Now let's get into what actually separates Jimin from the average pop singer. And there are several layers here worth unpacking. First is register transition. In vocal science, there are three main registers that get talked about most: chest voice, mixed voice, and head voice or falsetto. The average pop singer masters one or two of these well. What's truly rare is a singer who can move between all three so smoothly that the listener doesn't notice when the shift happens. Jimin does exactly that. Within a single short phrase, he can start in his middle register, glide up into falsetto, then back down into chest voice. And every transition feels like water flowing, not like a gear shift. An analysis published on Quora by a vocal observer describes Jimin as head voice dominant in his upper register, with clear falsetto and agile transitions. But what's really striking is his use of what they call economy of breath, a breath efficiency strategy combined with micro-breathing, taking small breaths frequently to sustain long notes without losing quality. This is a technique you more often see in very mature singers, not in an artist whose primary training was as a dancer. Second is timbre, a tone color that simply cannot be replicated. Producer Dog, who has worked with Jimin from the very beginning of BTS's career, has said that one of the key focuses for the Muse album in 2024 was showing a side of Jimin never seen before, while preserving his signature vocal character. He emphasized that Jimin actively studied how to change his vocal technique, seeking new ways to use his voice with more freedom and comfort. He even took specific vocal lessons for this, drawing inspiration from the pop artists who dominated the 2000s era, while keeping what makes his voice uniquely his own. This is what separates Jimin from so many other idols and mainstream pop singers. He doesn't stop. He doesn't rest at the point that already makes people amazed. He keeps pushing himself to find new dimensions of his voice. And the evidence is clear, from Face in 2023, to Muse in 2024, and now Arirang in March 2026. Jimin's tone color itself is often described with words rarely used for male vocalists. Mysterious, alternating between a mature quality and something almost youthful, sometimes sounding feminine in higher registers. That Japanese opera singer specifically called his ability to sound like a female voice in the upper register something extremely rare and compelling. And to be clear, this isn't about weakness or lack of masculinity. It's about timbral flexibility that allows him to express emotion across a wider spectrum than most male vocalists have access to. Third, and this is probably the most underrated quality, is Jimin's ability to change his vocal character based on the context of the song. Not just tempo or dynamics, character. In dark, introspective songs, his voice carries a quality that's completely different from when he's singing something light and playful. In songs that require emotional vulnerability, there's a specific texture in his voice that almost sounds like held-back tears. In more aggressive tracks, like several of the songs on Arirang produced alongside Mafia and Diplo, there's a sharpness that emerges and proves he's capable of far more than soft Jimin. Korean media reported that on Arirang, Jimin displays an expanded vocal spectrum with apparently effortless note transitions, creating what they called a one-man vocal showcase. That phrase, one-man vocal showcase, matters, because in a group album like BTS, the vocal load is typically distributed. But throughout Arirang, Jimin consistently demonstrates that even alone on a stage, the spectrum he carries would be more than enough to fill that space. Compare this to mainstream pop patterns, and what you see is specialization. Taylor Swift is a master of narrative vocal delivery. Her voice has an incredible storytelling quality, but her technical range is narrower than some of her peers. Billie Eilish built an entire career on intimately whispered vocals and breathy techniques that are iconic within a specific spectrum. Justin Bieber has warmth and strong belting ability, but register transitions are often audible. The Weeknd has extraordinary falsetto and an incredibly strong identity within his genre. All of these are exceptional artists, but what sets Jimin apart is his refusal to stay in one lane. He can move from vulnerability that's barely above a whisper to something full and powerful within a single song. He can sound like the voice you'd hear in an animated fairy tale in one moment, then carry a depth in the next that gives you chills. The emotional range he can communicate through voice alone, without the assistance of facial expression or dance, is something very few pop singers can honestly claim. Billboard praised Jimin's vocal performance on the single, Who from Muse, noting that from low-register verses to extended falsetto, the single pushed Jimin's vocal boundaries throughout an emotionally powerful performance, calling it one of the best pop listening experiences of that year. And that was a solo album. On Arirang, within the full context of BTS, that scale only grows larger. There's one more element worth talking about, and it's one of the least discussed: the relationship between Jimin's voice and his body as a dancer. Most pop singers who are also dancers face the same challenge. How do you maintain vocal stability in the middle of intense choreography? It's not easy. When your body is moving hard, your breath is disrupted. And disrupted breath means reduced vocal control. This is why many world-class performers choose to lip-sync or go semi-live for complex choreography performances. Jimin doesn't have that luxury. Or more accurately, he doesn't want it. Since the early days of BTS, He's been known as a dancer who executes extreme movements while still singing live. The technique he uses to survive, that is what experts call diaphragmatic economy, managing breath with maximum efficiency so that every inhale produces as much vocal output as possible. This isn't something that can be taught overnight. It's the result of thousands of hours of training that have shaped muscles and reflexes to an almost automatic level. Vocal fry is also one of Jimin's most underappreciated tools. Vocal fry is a technique of producing sound by partially closing the vocal cords in a controlled way, creating a distinctive texture. Sometimes it sounds like a very subtle crackle at the bottom of a phrase. Used incorrectly, it sounds like fatigue or poor technique. But in the right hands, it's an incredibly powerful expressive device. That Japanese opera singer even compared Jimin's use of vocal fry to the Britney Spears era, a time when using this technique in pop culture was still fresh and became a defining stylistic marker. What Jimin does with vocal fry is an imitation. He integrates it into the context of K-pop and the Korean language in a way that feels completely natural, never forced. In specific moments across his songs, a single vocal fry in the right place can shift the entire emotional weight of a phrase, from sounding powerful to vulnerable, or from playful to intimate. That's a very high level of control. Rolling Stone Philippines, reviewing Arirang, specifically called out Jimin and Jungkook's falsetto as an immediate attention grabber on one of the tracks, paired with crunchy drum production and tight harmonies. But what's more interesting is how across multiple tracks on the album, Jimin navigates completely different vocal ranges without ever sounding like he's straining to fit the song. Instead, every song feels like it was written specifically for what he can do, even though technically those songs exist in very different zones from each other. Vocal coach Carl John Franz, author of Becoming a Natural Singer, once compared Jimin's voice to Thom Yorke, the lead vocalist of Radiohead. That's not a casual comparison. Thom Yorke is one of the most iconic rock vocalists in modern music history, known for his ability to communicate complex emotion through an unconventional voice. That comparison isn't about genre or style. It's about the depth of emotional delivery and a timbre that simply cannot be found anywhere else. All of this brings us to the bigger question. Why does Jimin's vocal spectrum matter, not just to ARMY, but to the music world as a whole? Because in an increasingly homogenized pop industry, where streaming algorithms push artists to play it safe and chase proven formulas, Jimin is living proof that there is extraordinary value in having a vocal identity that cannot be copied. You can't type certain parameters into an AI music generator and get a voice like Jimin. You can't ask for it at an audition and expect anyone to replicate it exactly. And this isn't about technical perfection. Jimin himself is not without limitations. Some vocal critics have noted certain areas in his middle register that could be further developed, or moments where live consistency could be stronger. But that's human. What makes Jimin unique isn't that he's free from limitations. It's the way he works within those limitations, and the way he keeps pushing past them with every album, every era. From the dark and cathartic Face, to the lighter and more lyrical Muse, to Arirang showing all of those colors in the context of the full group, Jimin's vocal journey is one that never stops. Dog said it exactly right. With his versatile voice, Jimin is able to expand his musical palette further with every release. Musical palette. That word matters. A palette isn't one color repeated over and over. A palette is a collection of colors that, combined correctly, creates something that has never existed before. There's one dimension of Jimin's voice that almost never gets talked about in mainstream coverage, and it's arguably the most impressive of everything we've discussed. What happens to his voice under pressure? Not studio pressure, live performance pressure. The kind where 260,000 people are watching you in an open square in Seoul, where the wind is cutting across the stage, where the cameras are rolling for Netflix, and where one bad note will be clipped and replayed 1,000,000 times on social media before you even finish the set list. That was the reality of the Gwangwamun concert on March 21st, 2026. And Jimin didn't just survive it. He delivered. Every transition, every falsetto, every quiet moment where his voice needed to carry without the help of a big production swell, it held. That kind of live vocal consistency in extreme conditions is something that separates good singers from great ones. Because the studio is a controlled environment. You can punch in a note, comp a take, fix a breath. Live, you get one shot, And in front of 260,000 people, after nearly 3 years away from that kind of stage, Jimin showed up with a voice that sounded not just intact, but evolved. The same quality carried through to the Spotify Swimside event in New York, the intimate Guggenheim performances, and both nights on The Tonight Show. Across 4 completely different performance environments in the span of a single week, his voice adapted. Outdoors, acoustically challenging, televised, intimate, it didn't matter. And that adaptability, that ability to read a room and calibrate your voice to fit it, is something you cannot fake and cannot manufacture. It either lives in you or it doesn't. In Jimin, it clearly does. And that is the heart of Jimin's vocal spectrum. Not one technique, not one tone color, not one genre, but breadth, depth, and the courage to keep exploring without fear of leaving the comfort zone. In a pop world full of beautiful but safe voices, Jimin chose not to be safe. He chose to keep moving, keep changing, keep adding new layers to a voice that is already extraordinary. And if Arirang is the latest proof of all of that, then what we can say is, this is only the beginning. Because if there's one thing that has been consistent about Jimin from the very first day he stood on a stage with BTS to right now, it's that he never stops growing. And that, more than any technical score, more than any chart position, is the most compelling thing about the vocal spectrum of ParkJimin. If you're into content like this, deep dives into the music and artistry of BTS that don't usually get talked about, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. And if you have thoughts on Jimin's voice or another comparison you want to hear in a future video, drop it in the comments. Let's talk about it.